Diolch yn fawr pawb. We really do appreciate you coming to visit us here in Fishguard in Pembrokeshire. It really does take us having a natural pride for your culture, your language, and if you give them an early foundation of Welsh when they're very young, there's a chance that that language will last. It is quite difficult to preserve a culture. I'm trying to hold on really and protect and preserve this ancient culture. When the round hay bales were coming into Wales, it was always the square bales. The farmers were coming together. Jack, have you heard the rumours, boy, what's coming down from England? Do you know what they do with their bales, boy? They got them in round shapes. How the hell can you stack up round bales? This can't happen here, boys. So they call a meeting now, the Farmers Union. And one farmer stands up and he says, I'm dead against it. I don't think the cattle are going to get a good square meal. Yeah. Okay. 6,000 years ago, right at the beginning of the agricultural revolution, stone monuments, the Cromlechs, erected those Preseli hills. The original Stonehenge, the outer circle, could only come from those hills and 170 miles. It's on Salisbury Plain. It's a great mystery how they got them there. For me, it's a bigger mystery why. That little village, the Cromlech, the church, is the centrepiece, and the village, those stone monuments, the Cromlechs, became the centrepiece of the community, just like St. David's.
I then have to go off to sort out home-hosted lunches. So I will see you back up in the town at 12 o'clock at the coach, and I'll leave you in the capable hand of Andrew.
When St. David built his first simple wooden church here 1,500 years ago, the 6th century, he chose swampy, marshy Vallis Racina. 600 years later, in the 12th century, this great big stone cathedral is sloping away. Marshy ground becomes problematic. The tower has fallen down on 2 occasions. The west wall has been rebuilt and hopefully divine protection. I think we'll be fine today. There are 39 steps going down. When the Christians first came to the pagan side, not a question of destroying that worship, just a gentle assimilation. The pagan side becomes the Christian side. Sacred well, sacred waters becomes the holy Christian well. Burial ground becomes the Christian churchyard, and that's where the church is. Should we go in? The nave we're in now originates from 1180. But to say the cathedral was built then is erroneous, because it's been in a constant stage of development and building ever since to this present day. And it will continue, because I really don't think this cathedral is finished. And for me to say, will it ever be finished? Because there'll always be something else to develop. The miracle of the Synod of Brefi, Pelagianism heresy, going through the Welsh Celtic Christian Church. And David was called to speak at the Synod. The ground rose up so then everybody could see and hear him. A dove comes down from heaven and lands upon David's shoulder as a sign of the anointing and the blessing of the Holy Spirit. All of this journey culminates now in coming close to the bones and relics of St. David. In 2 recesses, they will have put their hand in to touch the bones of the saint himself, and in the other one, they would have left their gift. The Eucharist communion on his journey back to Wales, the sapphire stone. You feel in the middle there's a cross, and the stone has been associated with a number of miracles. Feel free to touch the stone. Cambria was much bigger than the area of Wales now. Essentially, it's the ancient British people. They have to protect their land, their culture, their people against Romans, Angles, Saxons, Jutes, Vikings, and the biggest invading army of the lot were the Normans. When the Normans came in, they conquered much of the Welsh land and took it over. What happens? They invited English Lord Rhys. It's a bit indulgent. What are they gaining from paying for the building of this chapel? Bishop Edward Vaughan. Name would be remembered, prayed for after death. For over 500 years, people have been coming here now and remember his name. And look at poor Giraldus Cambrensis in his very simple humble role. A religious man destined to be bishop. He was so powerful, the English were worried what would happen to the cause of Wales as he came into power. Given the orders to the craftsman to come in a wheelchair with a little Pomeranian dog on the lead, and people would say that he was quite difficult to work for. Died 1932. Now then, did the builders have the last laugh? Look at the foot of the tomb of Lady Maidstone. What do you see? Do you think perhaps the builders gone a little bit too far with the human-like features of that Pomeranian dog in chronological order? That is a bishop's succession line. Each one of those tiles represents a bishop going back to the time of St. David himself, from present times back to St. David. There's a lot of history there. There are some missing gaps which have been filled in with tradition. Henry VII. I love to say this, a Pembrokeshire man and a Welshman, the King of England. At the age of 14, a message is sent to him. Flee for your life because of your claim to the throne of England. They have to flee from Pembroke Castle and just wait. 14 years later, another message is sent to Henry. Set sail. The time has come for you to claim the throne of England. He sets sail from Brittany and it defeats Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth to become King of England. The beginning of the Tudor dynasty. The father of Henry VII and the grandfather of Henry VIII. Here, the cathedral has a heart of the cathedral. Some people would say that perhaps the defacing, the ruin of this cathedral was somewhat spared during the time of the Reformation because the grandfather of Henry VIII, his tomb is here. Celtic Christianity maintains its close links with the earth, the stars. Certain elements of Roman Catholicism completely cut it out because of the concerns of pagan worship. And spiritual connection just at the end of the journey. This is what the pilgrimage was all about, arriving here. 2 pilgrimages to St. David's or Santiago de Compostela equals 1 to Rome. 3 pilgrimages to St. David's or Santiago de Compostela equals 1 to Jerusalem. Coming to the end of our tour, and we'll be coming soon to our first host. Thanks, Steve, for safely driving us back and forth to St. David's and bringing us back. Thank you very much. And many of the good jobs in Wales do make Welsh speaking essential of a job. Jobs are not very well paid here, but quality of life, a lovely environment, the people, and you have to weigh many factors. Lowest crime rate in the whole of the United Kingdom. I tell you what, in the winter now, I'll give you a call. There's a lack of urgency sometimes. You have to fit in with a way of life.
Yeah. Tresco, the old Abbey. This is what Augustus Smith built the first garden around in 1834. The wall that goes around the Abbey, we call Augustus Wall. Within 20 or so years, it grew to what it is now, 17 acres. Augustus Smith started the gardens in 1834. He purchased, is leased off the whole of the Isles of Scilly, off the Duchy of Cornwall, now into the 5th generation of the Dorring-Smith family. Tresco is owned by Prince Charles, the Duchy of Cornwall, so Mr. Dorring-Smith pays our wages. We pay it back into him to buy food and drink, so you never actually earn any money here. It just gets recycled. And then each generation, through the RAF, the army, etc., of the Dorring-Smith family, bring back plants and species and seeds from those countries. The tree in front of us is a New Zealand Christmas tree. Days of minus 8 degrees Celsius. And then on top of that, we had a wind chill factor of minus 23. So that destroyed 80% of the garden. So these were hit quite hard, so we chopped them down, they've rejuvenated, and they still flower, but it's more dotted here and there rather than the whole canopy. We've got about 96 of these trees in the garden, so. 3 years after that snowfall, we had a hurricane. 128 mile-per-hour winds came across from the Atlantic, hit us head on, and we lost about 80% of the shelter belt. The gardens remained open through all that time, but obviously signs everywhere saying, apologising for the devastation of the gardens. And for the creation in 96, just a grassy hill, so the current owners wanted to put their mark onto the garden. So they came up with an idea of putting into a home and garden magazine a competition. It was eventually won by a Moroccan lady, but unfortunately in her design she had water features everywhere, which we didn't want. You don't have the water pressure and you don't want to be cleaning the ponds all year round. The fountain is done by a local artist who lives just outside Penzance, friend of the Dorring-Smith family. Made out of copper. A few people think it's actually real. Quite a dangerous sculpture. We have to clean the pond out 3 times a year. You empty the pond and then you have to get on your hands and knees and scrape up all the gravel and the coins that the kids are throwing in, so you're constantly banging your head on all the spikes. But we'll make our way on up towards the shell house. Plant ranges from the Mediterranean climate zones. You've got plants from South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, South America, Mexico, California, and then the Mediterranean basin, North Africa. And then the purple rosettes here are aeoniums. They're one of the easiest plants you can propagate. You just cut a rosette off with an inch of stem, shove that in the ground and that will grow. On where you cut it, it'll branch out and form 4 or 5 new rosettes. This particular variety, the less you water it, the darker these will go. And then with more watering and more precipitation sending through the winter months, the leaves will start reverting back to green. And then in late winter, early spring, they have a lovely yellow flowers, which is a real contrast to the purple. Bright orange flower at the top there is a eucalyptus, Eucalyptus fisifoli from Australia. Quite a small eucalyptus. You'll see that when you go back down to get your boat. It's very vivid, probably see it from space. Dies back in winter and then comes back and has a much vivid bluey purple flower than the common one. And then the tree behind the summer house here is a evergreen oak or holm oak from southern Europe. That's the tree that we use for all our taller hedges in the garden. Tall blue single flower spikes are all over the garden basically. These are one of our weeds. With the little blue mauvey flowers is an echium, so it's from Canary Islands. So it's a biennial. First year it'll put on 6 foot of growth. Second year 6 foot flower spike, flowers, self-season and dies. So all we do is just lean on it, gas all those seeds all over the place. Tall palm trees behind us, on your right, false Canary Island date palm. All the ones were planted in 1900, so over 100 years old now. So a little step down here, so just watch your footing. This is the kitchen garden, vegetable garden. Everything that's produced here goes up to the Dorring-Smith family, who still live here. There's only 2 of them living there, so they can't eat all of it. Some of it goes to the restaurant. When you have 80, 90, 100 mile-per-hour winds, it picks up all that sand and salt and deposits it all over the garden. So the winter months, a lot of the trees are looking quite bare. We also have about 12 beehives, so the honey from them, I think we might still have some in the shop if you wanted to buy any. Because of all the flowers in the garden from all over the world, it's a real concoction of nectars. And the north end of the island, you've got a lot of the heather. So there's a real concoction of nectars, so it's very sweet honey. About 2,000 people are living on the Isle of Scilly. Because we're on a granite base rock, commonly referred to as 2,000 drunks to a rock in the Atlantic. Happens occasionally. Rabbits, city shrews, which is like a little mouse with a long nose. We also have bats as well. Unfortunately, a few feral cats as well. People are a bit lazy with getting them neutered. Have their own housekeeper, their own cook and their own gardener / pool maintenance, busybody, etc. Quite a large house, and so they've made some of the rooms, they've created flats in there, so you've got about 9 flats in there for people that work on the island. So I used to have one of those flats where the flagpole is on that side, on the other side, but on the top floor. And so on a clear day like today, you can see the mainland 28 miles away. Again, a clear day, you might get to see the sunrise as well. So it's a lovely flat, but now moved into the hub of the island, New Grimsby. Propagate from this, you chop the whole leaf off, pin it down to a bed of compost, and then when each of these have started to become their own plant and rooted in, we'll chop the leaf off and then divide them up. Yeah. Valhalla actually means in Norse mythology, Hall of the Gods. Sailors would go off to the local pub and have a lot to drink. A way of remembering what ship was theirs, so they knew they'd go onto the right one, was by the figureheads. It's like a glorified registration plate on your car. A couple of ladies are missing their arms. That's because when they're out to sea or during rough seas, they used to take the arms off so they wouldn't get lost, and then stick the arms back on when they're calling to port. Thought to be around about 1,000 shipwrecks around the old city, so it shows you how treacherous the waters are around here. Still happening today. We had a container ship crash into St. Mary, well, just off St. Mary's 15 years ago, deposited a couple of containers of trainers or sneakers. Had about 5 years of swapping and exchanging lefts and rights, 8s and 7s, which saved them a lot of money, obviously. The cannon on your right is a French cannon, but it was on a Royal Navy boat called the HMS Association, which is one of Sir Cloudy Shovel's boats. He was in charge of 3 other boats called the Firebrand, Romney and Eagle. Rumour has it there was this Lonian man on board Sir Cloudy Shovel boat. He said he could smell home being the Isle of Scilly. Sir Cloudy Shovel didn't believe him and said no, we're near France. So Sir Cloudy Shovel had the Lonian man killed for insubordination. And unfortunately for Sir Cloudy Shovel, he was right, and all 4 ships crashed into the Western Rocks back in 1707, and over 2,000 men lost their lives in one night. It was the worst naval disaster in history without being shot at. And that was all because they couldn't read longitude properly. So from that one disaster, the British government had a worldwide competition, and that was eventually won by a British watchmaker by the name of John Harrison. But because he wasn't very high up in society, no one actually believed a pendulum clock would work at sea, because obviously you're always moving around. And it wasn't until after his death that they realised it did work, and he was finally rewarded, but not the amount that he was originally promised. And that's the method we still use today, but obviously it's now progressed to GPS and sat-navs, etc.
The old man say, leave her, Johnny, leave her. Tomorrow we will get our pay, and it's time for us to leave her. Leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, leave her, Johnny, leave her. Oh, the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Oh, the voyage is done and the winds don't blow, and it's time for us to leave her. Bon appetit, folks!